Union allies and supporters, my name is Cheyenne Shane Gallivan, and I work in the USW Communications Department. I'm here today as a representative of Local 3657 and the Health and Safety Committee for that local. We appreciate your attendance today on this solemn day of remembrance. Every day, we are seeing violations that remind us how critical the role of unions and our activism is in ensuring basic civil and human rights are not violated in our places of work. This is 2023, and we're seeing states in the U.S. attempting to roll back child labor laws as we speak. We're seeing immigrants, people of color, lesbians, gay, bisexual, transgender, and our queer communities, and women all face workplace violence, including harassment, bullying, retaliation, and sexual violence at heightened rates. Make no mistake, these are all issues of health and safety. Nobody should be afraid to go to work. I appreciate you all being here for this important event where we will remember our fallen siblings, hear from union leaders, members, and our constituency groups about the unique challenges they face with regard to health and safety in their workplaces, and renew our commitment to fighting for safer workplaces. Together, we can mourn the dead and fight like hell for the living. Without further ado, it is my honor to introduce our guest musician, Shylin Abram, a wonderful pianist and nephew of 3657 member Doug Ward, who will grace us with an opening song.
I was born by the river in a little tent, oh, just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. I go to the movies and I go downtown. Somebody keeps telling me don't you dare hang around, 'cause it's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Then I go to my brother said, brother, why don't you help me, please? Yeah. But then he winds up knocking me back down on my bending knees. Whoa, whoa. There were times when I thought I couldn't last for long. I know that I'm able to carry on. It's been a really long time coming, but I know, oh, no, a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. United Steelworkers, I know that a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will.
Wow, that was incredible. Thank you so much, Shylin, and Doug also for allowing us to hear that beautiful music. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you Local 3657 President Ryan Fairley. Ryan works in the organizing department at the USW and will speak today on behalf of Local 3657. Ryan.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Good morning. My name is Ryan Fairley, and I serve as president of United Steelworkers Local 3657, representing the clerical, non-technician, and technician employees of the United Steelworkers here at the international headquarters in districts across the United States and in the legislative office in Washington, D.C. I would like to thank Local 3657's Health and Safety Committee for their work in organizing today's Workers' Memorial Day ceremony. And thank you all for being here to help us remember workers who have lost their lives on the job. Due to the tireless efforts of the labor movement, drawing attention to work-related deaths, disease, and injuries, on April 28, 1971, the Occupational Safety and Health Act went into effect. But despite that victory over 50 years ago, and the additional protections won since, thousands of workers continue to be killed in workplace incidents every year, with even more being made sick or injured on the job. Do these continued preventable incidents lead corporations to take their profits and invest in making their workplaces safer for workers? No. Instead, they use those profits to lobby legislators across the country to roll back protections keeping workers safe, including protections for some of our nation's most precious and vulnerable persons, our children. Despite increasing violations of existing child labor laws, legislators are trying to loosen or remove regulations protecting children by eliminating work permits, eliminating age verification requirements, extending work hours, and even allowing children to work in construction, mining, timber, and manufacturing. We will take today to mourn the dead, but tomorrow we will continue to fight like hell for the living, to fight to prevent these regressive laws which further endanger our nation's children, to fight to pass the Protecting America's Workers Act, to fight to pass Pennsylvania Senate Bill 310 and House Bill 1976, and to fight to defend and strengthen safety and health protections for all workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Now speaking on behalf of the Local 3657 Health and Safety Committee, please welcome Janet Hill. Janet is also a national officer for CLUW, the Coalition of Labor Union Women. Janet?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me to speak. The theme for today is Organize for Safe Jobs Now. More workers want to join unions than ever before. And it's been more, as was said, it's been more than 50 years since OSHA went into effect. Thousands are still killed and millions more suffer injuries and illness because of unsafe working conditions. State and local workers still do not have protections under the law unless state law has been put in place. In Pennsylvania, we don't even have state law protecting public workers. And the penalties are way too low for if something happens at work. And we need to focus on preventing these injuries at work and better mental health resources, more money going into these jobs. And studies are showing that more than 1 in 4 people are experiencing some sort of mental health challenge. And if left untreated, these illnesses can have catastrophic effects. Suicides and overdose deaths are just a few examples. The ILO has a convention, 190, on workplace violence and harassment. Few of the countries that have ratified are Ireland and Iceland, and there are more, but we need to make sure that people are educated on this, and we also need to make sure that people are aware of the particular hazards that women and people of color face at work. Women face greater hazards than men do, and these hazards change depending where they are in the reproductive cycle. Pregnancy, menstruation, and menopause make these hazards more serious because standing too long, working at high temperatures and stress can have more of an impact on women. Keep in mind that race and ethnic background also factor in health and safety because certain racial and ethnic groups have higher risk for pre-existing conditions such as high blood pressure and other health issues. And there's additional dangers for pregnancy and menopause. And particularly it is a problem because everything is designed for men. Safety standards, tools, uniforms, protective equipment are all designed for the average man's weight and height. And if they don't fit properly, they can provide additional hazards. And because of social prejudice, women can face greater hazards in the workplace than men because they face a higher risk of harassment. And so I would like to actually make sure that everyone here gets involved. And because you are the most important factors at your workplace, if you get out there and you educate people and you get involved in health and safety, we will all benefit. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet. And today we're fortunate to have as our keynote speaker, Tom Conway, who has served as International President of the USW since 2019. Tom's local union activism began at the Burns Harbor Steel Mill, where he served as a griever and member of his local union's 6787's contracting out and safety committees. Tom then served as International Vice President, bargaining contract language in steel, aluminum, oil, and other major industries that kept members safer and healthier. Specifically, Tom negotiated the first full-time health and safety rep into the ATI Master Agreement, a model that then carried over to U.S. Steel and to other agreements in the industry. He also pushed employers to include support for the USW Health, Safety, and Environment Conference in their collective bargaining agreements to create safer workplaces for all. As international president, Tom is working to extend those protections to more people by leading the charge to organize more workers into the labor movement in fields ranging from manufacturing to healthcare to higher education. Here to discuss the importance of worker safety, please join me in welcoming our international president, Thomas Conway.
Thanks. I appreciate that, Shailene. Beautiful opening and song. And Kelsey, we're so sorry for your loss and sharing it, and you and your family, and terrible times. And to the local union, look, I really do appreciate the opportunity to join you here and be part of this. And each year you hold this memorial service, and we have a chance to look back at what's gone on during the year. And look, I watch during the course of the year how this local steps up. If we have a local who's on strike or in a lockout in a labor dispute, you're the first to step forward and try and help them out and raise funds for them. I watch your hospitality if we have locals who are in town bargaining contracts, how you treat them, how you take care of them. And I just want you to know I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Look, we often use this day to look backwards and to look at the tragedies that we've suffered during the course of the year. And some of them have just been so horrible. But we also have to use this time to think about what we're going to look at going forward. Because over the next decade, we're going to see change in the workplaces in our country at a pace that we've never seen it before. And frankly, our country is on a cusp of another industrial revolution. And when we had people come out of the agricultural fields and come to cities like Pittsburgh and go to work in factories, we now have people who are going to work in different settings. And the country is actually going to try and electrify the nation. And the changes in the workplace and the change in the jobs that are going to be coming, both in jobs that we're in currently and in the new jobs coming our way. I mean, there is a battery technology where people are going to be working in shops, building batteries, recycling batteries, toxic materials, tough materials, difficult work, and challenging work. And the country's not very well prepared for it. The ergonomics of building chips and semiconductors and the number of shops that are going to go up are going to be a big challenge for us. And a return to manufacturing in some way when jobs come on and we're building for an infrastructure, and we're building for new growth in the nation and changing to a clean economy. That's going to change so much of what we know, what we do, and the work that we do, and the parts that we make that go into that equipment. And it is really going to be a very significant change. We are the only people who are going to really be in the fight about that. And this local union and the SRU and some 750 people who work for the Steelworkers Union, that's going to be a big challenge for us and a big challenge for you going forward. And we meet that every day. And this is a good union when it comes to safety and health. And we fight about it. And we keep it in the forefront. But we can't ever really relax on it. And we've got to stay on top of this. We had a good meeting the week before last here with 2,000 participants in a safety and health conference. And we have to stay renewed about it. Safety and health really is the foundation of our union. And it's the single thing that we can do in the workplace to really take care of each other, to look out for each other, to make sure that people understand what's going on. If we're going to go through changes, and a lot of new entrants are coming into the workplace, or we're going to be learning jobs where we're now in closer proximity to robots that we've never been before, to the kind of machinery that we're not used to. You know, we've come out of jobs where we have high heat, tough environments, rolling and rotating equipment. It's going to be similar, but it's going to be different. And we've got to learn it, and we've got to step up to the challenge of it. And so, as the staff in the field tries to deal with those changes as they come, as we grow with new industries, you know, in the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I've signed 4 or 5 significant neutrality agreements. And those shops aren't yet ready to come up, but they're very different shops than we're used to. They're solar shops, they're battery shops. We're expanding in mining. They've always been difficult operations for us, particularly dangerous in the mining field. But mining is going to expand in this country. We've always been a mining union. So as we look out over the next decade or so, as we look at the changes that are coming for us, it is going to take all of us at every level that we're at in this organization to support our local unions, whether they're doing investigations, whether we have to train them, whether we have to help them, whether we have to help new people who are trying to form a union and grow with it, or face the changes that inexperienced local unions are having with what's going on in their workplace. That's our role. That's what we do. That's our job. And look, we're going to have opportunities to grow and organize. And it's crucial if this economy is going to succeed and if working people have a chance in it. Look, sometimes it's dismal when you think about how they think about working folks. You know, we had 2 brothers killed in the BP refinery, and Steve and his shop had been working through the settlement with OSHA, but OSHA leveled a fine on those deaths, $156,000. The SEC, if someone does some insider trading, or they do something that causes some rich guy to lose some money, they will level fines that are massively greater than that $156,000. If there's an EPA violation, the fines will be massive. The fines to kill a worker are pretty cheap. And so we have to understand that fundamentally how they value things and why we've got to fight the way we do. So look, the work you do is crucial. And the work you're going to be asked to do in the coming years is going to be, frankly, even more crucial. And we're going to have to learn new things and fight new ways and teach our union how to fight as things are coming up. Because if we don't fight, we're done for. And this union knows how to fight, and we know how to come together, and we know how to organize, and we know how to take on employers who aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So I want to thank you for this. I want to thank you for the remembrance we'll do today. And I want to thank you for the work that we're going to have to do going forward. I look forward to working with all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, President Conway. It's my pleasure now to welcome USW District 10 Director Bernie Hall. Director Hall is a fourth-generation steelworker who has bargained for fair contracts in nearly every sector of the union and now leads the union's efforts in Pennsylvania. Please welcome USW District 10 Director Bernie Hall.
Good morning. You know, each year when we gather for this ceremony, it's a reminder of why we do what it is that we do. We fight for workers every day. We fight to make sure they return home to their families at the end of their shifts in the same conditions in which they started. I want to start my remarks by welcoming Kelsey Stitt and the entire Stitt family, who are here today representing her husband, Kenny Stitt, who tragically lost his life on the job October 12th, 2021. It's a day I remember like yesterday. I know there's a number of people in this room that remember that day. Getting a call early in the morning, talking to the local, I know Colton Smith's here somewhere, their staff representative, throughout that day and the days following. You know, days like that are the days that we dread in this union. They're really moments that rip our hearts out, but they remind us that the fight is really never over. At the time, Kenny was barely 33 years old. He was at the peak of his life in many ways. He left behind a young wife and 2 young children with an uncertain future. Kelsey now runs a Facebook page dedicated to Kenny's memory called Love Like Kenny, and I would invite you all to take a look at it. But I gotta say that accounts like this should never have to be made. It's needless. Losses like this should never have to be endured. We're here today because we know that many gains that we've made in the realm of health and safety over the past few decades, we still have a really long way to go. There are always new challenges. President Conway talked about that. New technologies. There's always another employer who's going to prioritize profit over the well-being of their workers, who are the ones that really help them succeed. Right now in Pennsylvania, one of the biggest fights that we have is making sure that public sector workers, like our newest members at the University of Pittsburgh and thousands of others, public sector workers that we represent across the state, have the same protections as private employees. For the past 20 years, Democratic lawmakers have tried several times to extend federal health and safety protections to teachers, sanitation workers, and other public sector employees who keep the state running for us. Workplace health and safety protections under the Occupational Safe and Healthy Health Act, OSHA, they don't automatically cover public sector employees. As a matter of fact, states have to opt into it, and just a little over half the states have done so. Pennsylvania is not one of them. Here in Pennsylvania, there are literally hundreds of thousands of workers that go to work every day as public workers with no federal or state health and safety standards. The difference between public and private workers here in this state is really night and day, contrary to what many believe. If you're a private school employee, you can file a complaint about asbestos in a workplace. You can call OSHA directly and have an inspection done. But if you're one of our public school teachers, you have very limited options. There is no OSHA to call. There is nobody that's going to come in and do that inspection. You got to rely on your employer. But this year, we could finally do the work that needs to be done to correct this. Currently in Pennsylvania, after 20 years, we do have a House bill and a Senate bill that have been introduced. Our union, along with unions across the state, have really prioritized this, and we're making a push in the upcoming weeks. If passed, the 500,000 essential employees would be able to breathe a little easier knowing that they won't have to face unnecessary risk on the job. PennDOT workers, public safety officers, firefighters, paramedics, state store workers, nursing facility workers, school employees, transit, and more. 500,000 workers currently lack those protections. It's well documented that OSHA standards save lives. I think a lot of people are shocked when they hear this statistic, but if you work in the public sector, the jobs that some will tell you those are the great jobs, those are the easier jobs, you have a 64% higher chance of being hurt at work than if you work in the private sector. This is unacceptable, especially here in PA. Listen, we don't need another social media page memorializing a worker that has been killed on a job. We certainly don't need another family having their lives turned upside down, and we certainly never want another child growing up without a parent. Every worker, no matter where they work, no matter what sector they work in, deserves the same basic protections on a job. It's that simple. We owe it to them to fight to ensure they can focus on the people they help, the communities they strengthen, and the families they love. Look, I'll close by saying this. Our union's been around a long time, and we're not going anywhere. And as long as we're here, we're never going to stop fighting for these protections. We take this day every year to reflect and mourn for those who have been seriously injured or killed at work. But I think I would say this on behalf of everybody in this room today, to Kelsey and Kenny's family, that I promise you we'll never stop fighting for families like yours. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Director Hall. We now welcome a very special guest, Ms. Kelsey Stitt, whose husband, Kenneth Stitt, was a local 1016-03 member who tragically passed away after a life-ending industrial accident at the NLMK Steel plant in Farrell, Pennsylvania on October 12, 2021. We are so grateful to Ms. Stitt for speaking with us today. Today we also welcome several of her family members who've joined us. Please help me in giving a warm welcome to Ms. Kelsey Stitt as she shares her story of her husband, Kenneth Stitt.
Okay, I'm going to try not to cry. Hi, my name is Kelsey Stitt. I am the wife of the late Kenny Stitt Jr. I graduated from Slippery Rock University with a bachelor's degree in marketing and avoiding eye contact with people. My junior year, I somehow managed to schedule an online public speaking course. And this thing that I'm doing today is not me, but I haven't been me since I lost Ken. And I jump at any opportunity to speak about him and talk about our story, starting with giving a eulogy at his funeral. I believe this is what I'm supposed to do. What other reason would there have been for something like this to happen to my family? We can sulk at our situations forever, or we can use them for God's glory. Ken and I met at work a long time ago. His cousin, who is here with us today, is the manager at my dad's ag waste store. She hired Ken. He's 4.5 years older than me, but somehow a few years after he was hired, we fell in love. Ken worked at DeFurco as college help a couple summers. He always wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps, Ken Sr., who also worked at Sharon Steel and DeFurco, especially after losing him to cancer in 2006 when he was a junior in high school. When college didn't work out, my Ken worked a few odd jobs until he got hired at DeFurco full-time in June of 2012. We were so excited. His twin sister was preparing to get married, and we always dreamt of doing the same, but we were kind of poor. The money that Ken made down there, it was nothing to snub your nose at. December 2012, we got engaged. December 2014, we bought a house. I finished college in May of 2015, and we were married in July. We enjoyed each other's company a lot when Ken wasn't at work, of course. We waited a few years to have kids. Our daughter Cambry was born in February of 2019. August of 2020, our union went on strike, and we got pregnant with baby Kenny the 3rd in December. We were ecstatic. I was so relieved that we were going to have a boy, and Ken's name would be carried on, and he'd no longer be the last Stitt of his family left. March 2021, he finally went back to work. Baby Kenny was born August 2021. Ken was killed October 12th, 2021. He was 6 days away from turning 33. Our kids were 2.5 years and 2 months old. I was 28. Ken was hands down the best husband and father ever. He was patient, loving, caring, kind, always, no matter what anybody else ever did to him. He was an excellent example of how we are supposed to be. The love of Jesus radiated off of him at all times. He loved helping people. He did anything for me, even if he had no idea how to do it. He loved his kids and was so proud of them. So many people down at the mill told me over and over how much he loved us. He thought the world of us. He was always showing everyone pictures of his kids, telling stories. He enjoyed his life, his family, his job. He was happy, and he made anybody he came into contact with happy. Sometimes I think it's easy for people to see the good in others when they're no longer on earth. Not Ken. Everybody could see his worth when he was here. I told him almost weekly that he was a better husband than I was a wife, and I stand by that. I have a lot of regrets. I try to channel my self-disappointments into being more like Ken in my new life. It's not an easy thing to do. He was one of a kind. Ken was 8 months short of being employed at NLMK for 10 years. He was proud of his job. He loved his coworkers. He loved telling me in our big family stories about working there. He would come home with pictures and videos of things that happened, or just a general picture of the department that he was working in at that time so that he could explain in great detail exactly what he was doing at work. When we went on strike, Ken was always down on the line when he was scheduled. When we were asked to go down extra, we were there. As the weather changed that year, Ken could always be seen splitting wood to put in the burn barrels outside. He wanted nothing to do with being stuck inside the propane-heated sheds with the other smelly guys. He was always doing something. He was always talking to somebody about something. We were complete opposites. I have been seriously lost without him the last year and a half. It's been really hard to put myself out there because Ken always did everything for me. When Ken was killed, he was working in the roll shop. He had a bid over there a couple years earlier. It was better pay, and he wanted to be with one of his really good work friends again. That friend actually ended up bidding out of the department right after Ken got in, but Ken stayed because he loved it. Ken was an extremely hard worker. He was one of the best. There are no arguments about that. He knew what he was doing. He did what he was supposed to do when he was supposed to. He did it correctly. He worked smart and safe and in a timely manner. I did not once ever worry about Ken being at work. I knew that guys had been injured down there before, but never killed. I knew that Ken knew what he was doing. I never once considered the possibility of him being in contact with somebody who was not trained correctly. I never thought twice about something going so wrong that he would lose his life. All of these things were on my mental list entitled, "That would never happen to me." Those guys down there, they watched out for each other. They all have families. They knew how dangerous it was. Because of company negligence and training and disorganization of the department, my husband was in the wrong spot at the wrong time and was pinned between a roll on the crane and one sitting on the floor. Because of the carelessness of this company, I was woken up at 2 a.m. by the cousin who had hired Ken at my dad's store with a phone call. "Kenny was hurt real bad at work. I don't know what happened," she said. I frantically read all the messages on my phone from everybody down at the mill. When I got a hold of the union, I knew he was dead. I knew it in my heart. There were no messages from Ken, none. The last thing he said to me was, "Here I am," when he got to work on the night of October 11th, 2021. The last day I saw him. October 12th, 2021, early in the morning, he was gone forever. October 12th, 2021 was the longest day of my life. 2 a.m. wake-up call, driving to the hospital with my newborn and cousin. Ken's mom running up to me in the conference room of the hospital yelling, "He's gone, he's gone." The coroner handing me his lunchbox and phone. It wasn't real for a long time, like months. And to be honest, all of his stuff from work that night is still sitting in his red Flyer wagon in our garage. His drink is still in his bottle. I can't touch it. We had several visitors that day throughout the day. I was numb. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. I always assumed I could never live without Ken. I have proven myself wrong, obviously, but not without the assistance from a lot of people. The union was on the case immediately. They raised a ton of money. They brought food. They brought me things I knew were still in the mill that were Ken's. They had everybody on the search for other things that were missing. The offers for help with anything I need are still on the table. Anytime I see one of them, it's the same thing. Anything you need, please let us know. I will never forget that first week when they told me that I'd be a sister forever. I didn't take that lightly. I like to tell people about all the things that Ken has blessed me with. His family is one of them. I love them so much. I can count on them to do anything for me at any time. They have done an excellent job working together to try to fill Ken's shoes. Ken's life was half his family and half his work, and I can never put into words how grateful I am for our union. I know if I ever need anything that they'll be there. Ken was the best husband, father, son, cousin, everything. Our union is the best union. I'm not really sure how I could have ever been so blessed to have the best of both of these worlds. It has been nice to be in regular contact with a union official close to my age. Although Colton is 4.5 years younger than I am, and he'll never let me forget it, I have really appreciated being able to relate life's problems with him. It's definitely been one of the things that has helped me get through. Today is actually my 30th birthday. This is not at all any way I ever imagined spending this milestone of a day, and it serves as a grim reminder that I must have been made for this life. My husband's death was 100% preventable. Company negligence stole him away from me, our children, and our family. I have never felt the surrealness of my husband just being a number to the company he worked for until he was killed. They didn't know who he was. They didn't know me or our family or how young we were. And after a while, I don't think they really cared much anymore. The union knew my husband. He was an active, dedicated member, as the union was active and dedicated to our lives before and continuing after the accident. You get what you give, and I'm here to continue to give hope in memory of my husband. A year ago, I started a Facebook page. I named it Love Like Kenny. I post memories of him and updates on my life and our kids' lives. I try to tagline everything with eternity is worth it. I've heard that the things I write give people hope for their own lives. That was my goal. We had our first annual Kenny Stick get-together and gun raffle last October. We had a ton of help from the union with that. It went really well, and we have been actively planning the second one for this October. It's important for me to continue doing this. I want my kids to grow up knowing how important their dad was, be able to stay in contact with people from his work, and keep his memory alive, celebrating his life with things he loved. We also started a pulling team in memory of Ken. One of his favorite things to do is watch the truck and tractor pulls. His cousin and best friend, Matt, has a semi that we have been rebuilding to make it better so we can actually compete. We also decided to make a dream of Ken and Matt's come true by rebuilding the family Oliver tractor so we can pull it as well. I can't wait to see that come true. Ken's little cousin Clayton also has a garden tractor that he pulls. I'm really excited for this summer. I love spending time with the family, especially when we're doing things that Ken would love. We're just a bunch of happy rednecks trying to make it through life without one of our biggest supporters. Ken is buried in Mount Washington Cemetery in Jefferson Township along with his dad and several other family members. The stone that I designed for our plots was just installed in December. I knew I wanted to put a Bible verse on there that would speak for both of our lives, so I'm going to end on that. And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. 1 Peter 5:10. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelsey, for your vulnerability and willingness to share with us that story of your husband. We fight sorry, that was really touching. Thank you. We fight for higher health and safety standards at our workplaces so no one has to go through what you have. Local 3657 would like to honor your husband's memory with a contribution in the amount of $500 to the school fund for your children, Cambry and Kenneth. Thank you once again. I'd now like to introduce to the microphone Tamara Lefkowitz, the USW's Healthcare Workers Council Coordinator. Workers in healthcare and social service industries are 5 times more likely to be injured than other workers on the job. And Tamara is instrumental in ensuring that the union is there to uplift the health and safety issues that are faced daily by healthcare workers across North America.
Good morning. On this Workers' Memorial Day, we come together to remember and honor workers who have lost their lives on the job. The USW represents more than 50,000 healthcare workers and would like to pay tribute as well to their dedication, courage, and sacrifice, and reaffirm our commitment in ensuring that every worker has a safe and healthy workplace. Healthcare workers on the front lines of the pandemic were left burnout and short-staffed despite their resilience. Limited data shows that more than 1.5 million nursing home workers have been infected with COVID, and more than 3,000 died as a result. However, we must also recognize the ongoing risks and challenges that they face every day, including workplace violence. According to the AFL-CIO's annual Death on the Jobs report, healthcare workers face a higher risk of workplace violence than workers in any other industry, and this is unacceptable. We must do everything in our power to protect healthcare workers from violence and ensure that they get to go home at the end of their shift in the same shape that they started it, just like they do for their patients. OSHA's Workplace Violence Prevention Standard provides a framework for protecting workers from violence on the job. However, that standard is currently voluntary, and many employers are not taking adequate steps to protect workers from violence. We need to advocate for stronger legislation that makes workplace violence prevention mandatory and provides healthcare workers with the protections that they need to stay safe while caring for all of us and our families. We also need to make sure that when employers violate safety standards and put their workers at risk, that they are held accountable and that they feel it. Which is why the USW has been developing customized health and safety trainings for healthcare workers, which were recently introduced at last week's International Health, Safety, and Environment Conference. On this Workers' Memorial Day, let us not only remember the healthcare workers that have lost their lives on the job, but also recommit ourselves to fight for workplace safety. Let us honor their legacy by advocating for stronger workplace violence legislation, stronger enforcement of safety laws, and greater protection for all workers. Let us show that we truly care for the workers who care for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Tamara. Now I'd like to welcome Amanda Green, the USW Civil and Human Rights Department Director, to speak about health and safety from the standpoint of civil and human rights.
Good morning, siblings. My condolences to the Stitt family. We've said it over and over again. We mourn for the dead. We fight for the living. Well, mourn we will do. We have to mourn the fact that Black Latino workers face disproportionate exposures to many job safety and health hazards in the workplace. These workers often work in dangerous industries and experience exploitation and retaliation by their employers. We have to also mourn the fact that even though we're talking about people who are being killed in the workplace, dying in the workplace, there are 120,000 per year, 120,000 people per year dying because of occupational disease exposure. And if there are any questions about what that is, my dad was a truck driver for 45 years. Inhaled diesel fumes for 45 years. Occupational disease shortened his lifespan. And we also have to mourn that our siblings who are members of the LGBTQ+ community are at greater risk of harm in the workplace, loss of life, loss of limb, because of being ostracized or isolated. So when we look at mourning, we also have to look at the fighting. And we also have to look at what we are going to do about this. And so we fight because we're going to call for stronger anti-retaliation protections to be put in place for all workers, but especially Black, Latino, and immigrant workers who are disproportionately killed and injured on the job, and especially targeted for speaking up against unsafe work conditions. And we're going to also fight because we know that the isms, the racism, the sexism, discrimination seeps into people's worth. Black and brown lives are not worthless, nor are they worth less. There's an attorney who was charged with administering the September 11th fund. These are the issues he faced: people's race, people's gender, where they lived, things that you wouldn't think would go into calculating what a family may receive. These things matter somehow. But when we fight, I'm happy to say I've been able to work with some lawyers who are fighting against that discrimination that goes into these compensation calculations so that one life isn't worth less or more than another. Everybody's valued the same. And we also have to fight, especially us in labor, remember who we are. Long before OSHA, Occupational Safety Health Administration, long before that, we've been bargaining and fighting for health and safety protections in our collective bargaining agreements. There was a time when we had something called Stop the Job, or we had something called a safety strike. We were the ones who let people know when things were unsafe and when things had to change. But we know that there have been changes in policies, changes that impact our fight. Don't be discouraged, be encouraged. So when we say mourn for the dead, fight for the living, we're fighting for those who contribute to our lifestyles, contribute to our standard of living. And when we say mourn for the dead and fight for the living, we do that because we know that not everyone who went to work today will get to come home. And we fight for the living because we know that not everyone who comes home will come home whole. That's why we fight. We fight for those who are working to help us. We fight for those so that they can have a better standard in the workplace than we have had today and yesterday. Remember, that's why we fight. Keep up the fight.
Thank you, Amanda. I now have the pleasure to introduce Sabrina Liu, who is president of the Pittsburgh chapter of the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance.
Good morning, everyone. The Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance, or APALA, has more than 20 chapters in the United States, and APALA works on advancing workers, immigrants, and civil rights. We're a constituency group of AFL-CIO. We're all here today because far too many workers die from preventable hazards. And when it comes to deaths from workplace violence, homicide accounts for the majority of these deaths. There were 392 workplace homicides in 2020 alone. This epidemic disproportionately affects women workers and Black and Latino workers. But I cannot tell you how workplace homicide affected Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders workers in that same year, because data about this group of workers was not available from this most recent reporting. And my community is often left out of the conversation around the most important issues impacting our society. But no worker should be invisible. To be able to ensure everyone's safety, we first need to have good data that accounts for us all. Another group of workers that tend to be invisible and even more vulnerable are the immigrant workers. In the US workforce, more than 17%, or 28 million people, are foreign-born, and Asian Americans account for nearly 1/4 of that population. Immigrant workers are particularly vulnerable because their authorization to work in this country is often controlled by their employer, which gives their boss unjust power over them, whether they have documentation or not. And this means that immigrant workers face issues like detention, deportation, sexual harassment, and gender-based violence on the job. And for people of color and immigrant workers, sometimes the most dangerous part of their day can be when they're on the road to and from work. In Pennsylvania and 30 other US states, undocumented workers are unable to apply for a driver's license, and they risk deportation and family deportation, family separation every time they go to work, they go to grocery store, they go to a hospital to seek health care. So locally in Pennsylvania, APALA Pittsburgh and Philadelphia chapters are part of the Driving PA Forward campaign to push for access to driver's license for everyone, which should be a common sense policy that ensures the safety for everybody on the road, including drivers and pedestrians. And this is also a worker issue, because in many cases, undocumented people need licenses to work in their chosen career. Migrant or not, undocumented or not, we are all part of the same movement, and we all keep this nation thriving. And no one is safe at work or in their communities until we all are safe.
Thanks, Sabrina. Now please welcome Jessica Rios, President of the Labor Council for Latin American Advancement.
Good morning. Hispanic workers play a critical role in our nation's workforce. Throughout history, immigrants have been low-wage laborers who make great contributions to our communities and our economy, yet must perform some of the dirtiest, most dangerous jobs under similarly repressive and exploitative conditions. Latinos drive labor force growth in the United States, but are disproportionately impacted by injuries and illnesses while on the job. Black and Latino workers are more likely to leave their homes for work and never return. The fact is haunting. Year after year, the Latino fatality rate continues to be disproportionate to the overall job fatality rate. Senseless preventable deaths. Experts have cited a history of discrimination in hiring and promotion and of assigning Black and Hispanic workers to the riskiest tasks, compounded by language barriers that can keep many of these workers from receiving adequate safety training, create obstacles to accessing health insurance, and instill a fear of retaliation that can prevent workers from reporting unsafe working conditions. Latino men are overrepresented in construction and maintenance occupations, but underrepresented in managerial and professional roles. They often work in occupations with high rates of injury and in work environments where injuries are severely underreported. Even though some workers can face an increased risk because of the jobs they do, they may fear retaliation for speaking up about unsafe work conditions, or they may not understand their rights because English is not their first language. From the first day on the job, every worker is entitled to a safe and healthy workplace, free of hazards regardless of where they're from or the language they speak. It is every worker's right to be trained in a language they understand and report a concern about safety or health at work. So what can we do to help them? Latinos and immigrants need unions, but they also need real allyship. We can't help if we continue to perpetuate the same behaviors companies do, like ignoring the need for language access. Labor unions and the ability to bargain collectively offer resources against employer retaliation, mechanisms to better enforce labor laws and regulations, greater equity in pay and job security. We need to push for contract language that protects all of our siblings, no matter where they or their families were born. Contract language protects us when the law falls short. We need to fight to improve rights for all working people and strengthen collective bargaining laws. Advance immigrant rights so all working people have full workplace protection, and strengthen whistleblower and anti-retaliation protections for reporting job injuries and hazards. Allies need to speak up and use their privilege to advocate for language access and major representation in underrepresented roles. There's no dignified life if we aren't treated with dignity at work. So let's continue to remember the dead and honor those we failed by expanding the ways we fight like hell for the living, no matter where they're from or what language they speak, to make sure that every worker goes home safe and healthy at the end of each day.
Thanks, Jessica. We have a couple more speakers. Please join me in welcoming Chelsea Engel, board member of Pride at Work Pennsylvania and the USW representative for the national chapter of Pride at Work, who will talk about LGBTQ+ workers and their challenges for health and safety in their workplaces.
Good morning, siblings. Like Cheyenne said, I'm speaking today on behalf of Pride at Work Pennsylvania. If you aren't familiar, Pride at Work is the AFL-CIO affiliate that represents LGBTQ+ workers. Although some progress has been made in areas for our community, like marriage equality and representation in pop culture, there's still so much work that needs to be done in the realms of economics, workplace discrimination, harassment, healthcare, and violence. For far too many of us, when we enter a new workplace or even a union event, we have to ask ourselves, will it be safe for me here? Will my colleagues accept me? Will I be fired if I talk about going to the movies last weekend with my partner? It's important to note that this type of stress impacts marginalized people no matter where we go. Whether at home or on the job, the burden society places on your shoulders stays with you. It can impact your ability to think clearly, putting you at risk of making mistakes that can endanger yourself or others. It also puts you at greater risk of substance abuse and self-harm, including suicide. We also know that queer people are at higher risk for developing cancer and other chronic health issues than the general population, most likely related to the stress and discrimination in healthcare. In the 2015 book, Steel Closets, written by Ann Bailey, a friend of the union, a trans woman named Elise, who worked at a steel mill for most of her life, detailed her experience in a traditionally single-gender environment. Elise came out at work after she had suffered her second heart attack, concluding that the stress from hiding was as likely to kill her as the violence she anticipated if she stopped. The death threats and the damage to her locker and her car were immediate and intense. And during the period of 1997 to 2000, she was raped multiple times by coworkers. Elise was and is not alone, as many in 1 in 4 queer workers have been sexually harassed at work, while 1 in 5 have experienced physical harassment on the job. It's clear that if we want to support LGBTQ+ people, labor can do so by making sure our rights at work are enforced and our health and safety are protected like every other worker. We can ensure our local unions have inclusive contract language, specifically anti-discrimination language and inclusive healthcare. We can make sure stewards and union leaders are trained properly to work and communicate effectively and compassionately with our community. And we can support state and federal legislation that protects our community from discrimination and harassment, including the Equality Act and the Pennsylvania Fairness Act. In this movement, we like to say that an injury to one is an injury to all, and it's one of the things I love most about us. My hope and my call to action to everyone here is that we commit to making that phrase a reality for all workers. Thank you.
Thanks, Chelsea. It's my pleasure now to welcome our final speaker, somebody who has been on strike since last fall and has had to deal with unsafe working conditions, unsafe conditions on the picket lines. Joe Knupski, a member of the News Guild and a striking Pittsburgh Post-Gazette worker. Joe is a member of the News Guild and local TNG CWA 38061.
Good afternoon. I'm from the Guild of the Post-Gazette. We're on strike. And when I came and I thought about what I was supposed to say, I thought about we're going into 7 months without a contract, 6 years without a contract, going into 7 months on strike. But every time I wanted to put that to paper, something else struck me. And thank you for speaking to us. Remembrance is a powerful thing. It hurts, but it also heals. It reverberates and echoes up thoughts of young men and women who have died way too soon. The sights, the sounds, the smells of husbands and wives and sons and daughters, which we miss so much. We start to visualize what they were like and what we missed. It reminds me of my father and grandfathers who trudged off to work each day to make a living with lunch pail and helmet in hand. I know I did that also with J&L. And I know the life of, you were talking about missing your husband. how many people I worked in the coal mines and steel mills I've seen injured and killed. It's never easy. It reminds me of the union life, the workers' life, of the co-workers who made the work a little lighter with the shared experience of the danger and the toil of every day, with dark humor sometimes. It reminds me of all that sacrifice for a better life for their kids and a wider smile on their spouse's face. Remembrance is a powerful thing. It hurts, but it also heals. We gather today to remember those who've passed too soon, but we also celebrate the spirit with which they work, just as all union men and women have worked since steel and coal helped forge Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania. Union work put bread on the table, a decent roof over our heads, and money to raise a family. Union work means fair contracts, work security, benefits, prosperity, and as most of the speakers were saying today, safer conditions. And finally, remembrance is a powerful thing. I hope when you hear this bell toll in the ceremony, you will pay your silent respects to those who have passed this year, those that are named and so missed by their loved ones. But I also hope that you spend a moment remembering those in your own life that went off to work to make you better, to give you the opportunity to be where you are today. Remember them. And I hope in that memory, it helps you to heal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Today, as we memorialize our fallen Union siblings, we will read aloud each of their names and ages. As each name is read, we will ring the memorial bell and extinguish a single candle. This bell has a memorable story to it. It comes to us here from Local 1196 at the ATI plant in Brackenridge, where it was salvaged from a rail car incident that took the life of Brother John Novick in 2005. Ringing the bell today is Fran Arabia of USW Local 1196, that same local that this bell came from. Extinguishing the candles are Jacqueline McCann and Alyssa Scott of Local 3657. And today, the reading of the fallen names will be R.J. Huffnagel and Beth Turnbull, both of Local 3657.
Lonnie S. Ryorka, 46. Reaver Boone Vaughn, 61. Kwok Tu Lee, 51. Samuel Lofton, Jr., 42. DeWitt Amari, 52. Abraham Thomas, 46. Travis Kaysen, 43. Aaron M. Hobart, 29. Joseph Farrell, 34. Mark Mattern, 59. Michael Osika, 44. Benjamin Morrissey, 32. Maxwell Morrissey, 34.
Timothy Cole, 59. Eric Sean Peddle, 47. Derek Gerard, 39. Richard Chico Garza, 65. Seth Badger, 32. Ryan J. Semla, 36. Tyler James Rogers, 22. Jonathan Lee Steinke, 24. Ken Tran, 48. Monty James Edwards, 46. Louis Schuster, 46. Paul Todd Belongi, 63. Blake Nutting, 26.
Thank you, siblings. Please now turn your attention to the Pittsburgh Labor Choir and guests from 3657, who will sing the traditional labor song, Bread and Roses. This song commemorates the tragedy of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, which claimed the lives of 146 young women in March of 1911, while highlighting the pioneering role that women in particular played in fostering political, social, labor, and economic reform in its aftermath. Words to the fourth and final verse can be found on the backside of your programs, and we're asking that everyone please join us in singing that final verse together. We're going to sing that final verse 2 times through. Thank you to everyone for being here today to mourn those we've lost and to make commitments to fight for the living. We've heard from our constituency groups across the spectrum about the ways in which Union First health and safety measures can really make a difference in the lives of union members and their families. We thank our speakers today for uplifting the issues that are relevant to so many United Steelworkers members. A special thank you, of course, to the Stitt family and all the families of members who have lost loved ones. Thank you also to the members who helped to put this program together, in addition to the people you've seen up here. We've had tremendous help from Allie Patonic, Janet Hill, Kurt Gapsby, Greg Cole, Aaron Hudson, Ryan Gaines, Connie Brown, Scott Weaver, Ryan Fairley, and many others. Thank you all. Following today's ceremony, you're invited to join our fellow members from the Allegheny Fayette Central Labor Council at their Workers' Memorial Day ceremony at 11:30 in nearby Market Square downtown. Thank you.